Professor Kessler is an assistant professor of business economics and public policy. He completed his PhD in business economics at Harvard University.
Today, Professor Kessler is going to be talking about organ donation, priority, and loopholes.
Today in the United States, 20 people die while waiting for an organ transplant. The waiting list grows each year, and usually in a market with excess demand, we'd expect the price to rise to equilibrate supply and demand. Fortunately, not in this market, because this market isn't a usual market. You can't buy and sell organs. So if you need an organ, you need to receive one from a donation, either a living donor or a deceased donor. Now, living donors give an organ while they're alive, usually one kidney, but deceased donors agree to give all their organs upon their death. And deceased donors are particularly important for two reasons. One, a deceased donor can give up to 8 life-saving organs, and there are more deceased donors than living donors, which means the vast majority of organs come from deceased donors. Now, how does somebody become a deceased donor? First, they register at their state's Department of Motor Vehicles. So once they've registered, they then have to die in a way that makes their organs available for transplant, which happens in about 1 of 30 cases in the United States. Right? So even though all the donation happens after death, there's hesitation for people to register as donors, and only 43% of Americans who are eligible are registered as donors. And there's big variation across states. Montana and Alaska have the highest. Pennsylvania comes in about average. California, a little bit worse. My home state of New York, an embarrassing 18%. And the great state of Texas, 12%. Don't mess with Texas, and definitely do not need an organ there. So how do we increase the rates of organ donor registration? Well, one way is to change the way we allocate organs. In the US, if you're on a waiting list, it's a first-come, first-served list. But in other countries like Singapore and Israel, people get priority on the transplant waiting list if years ago they agreed to be registered organ donors. All right, so we want to understand this incentive to get people to register, so we go into the laboratory and we have subjects play a game that resembles the decision to register as an organ donor. Now in the lab, it's not real organs, but it is real priority rules with real money at stake. So we have subjects play this game. They play it a number of times. They make the decision in a number of lifetimes. And when it's a first-come, first-served waiting list, we see that donation rates are between 30 and 45%. Right? So what happens if we introduce a priority rule and give subjects in the lab priority for the organs that come in if they've registered as a donor? Well, then the donation rate skyrockets about 100%, right, to between 80, 75%. Right, so this incentive works. People who are provided a reason to register as a donor actually take advantage of it and do it. So the question is now, how do you actually implement these priority rules? How you do it matters a lot. So Israel just implemented their priority system, 2012. This is the registration card they use. You sign this card to register as a donor, but there's a checkbox on here that lets you say, I want a clergyman to approve my donation after I die. This introduces the potential for a loophole if you want to get priority but never actually donate. Right? You sign the card, but then you tell your clergyman, hey, if I die, don't let them take my organs. So we go back to the lab and we want to study the potential for this loophole. We have subjects play a similar game. We get the same result. When priority works like it's supposed to, we get a big increase. What happens when we introduce a loophole? So people who want priority can just take it, but they don't have to donate. Then donation rates drop just as they were before with the first-come, first-served waiting list. So you lose all the benefits of having priority if you allow people to take the loophole. In this version of the game, we didn't give subjects much information. They didn't know how many people registered or how many people took advantage of the loophole. But we wanted to investigate that. So we reran the study, this time telling people how many people registered and how many people took the loophole when it was available. Right, so we get the same initial result when the standard priority rule, a big increase. But when we allow people to take the loophole and we tell them how many other people are taking the loophole, it does worse than the first-come, first-served system. When people know that others are taking advantage of the loophole, they don't want to contribute out of the goodness of their heart. So people who would have donated decide, you know what, I'm just going to take the loophole because everybody else is doing it too. So these priority systems can actually have a significant impact, but you have to implement them in the right way. Now, I didn't do this research alone. I did it with Al Roth, who won the 2012 Nobel Prize in Economics this year. It is certainly quite an honor, but we know that there are bigger honors like the one that's up for grabs today.
Very nice.